Hey everyone, welcome to Therapy Connections, the podcast where real therapists give you the highlights of the things we say in therapy and provide some skills, education, and ideas about how to feel better. This is not a replacement for traditional therapy, but can serve as a tool for refreshing and learning between sessions. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, welcome to today's episode of Therapy Connections. Today we're going to be talking about thinking errors and specifically all or nothing thinking. I think sometimes it's called black and white thinking. Something I think we see lots of clients do, but I think we're all probably guilty of ourselves. So where do you guys start with this?
I usually start by telling people a little bit about what a thinking error is. It's pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes we don't realize that the thoughts that go through our head are not true, which we kind of talked about in our last episode. But sometimes it's not just that they're a little bit off base. They're actually errors in our thinking. Mm-hmm. They're actually things that are really not true. And there are patterns to some of these kinds of thinking errors. If you catch yourself thinking something and realizing it's not true, it probably fits into a specific category, a specific kind of thinking error that most people have, whether they're aware of them or not.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And the list of thinking errors is quite long.
It is. And over the next few episodes, we're going to be covering some of the main ones that we see a lot of, some of those main categories of thinking errors. But today is all or nothing thinking day. So, Josh, when do you feel like you see this?
All of the time.
That's a thinking error.
Does that count?
How black and white thinking of you.
This one I think is one that all of us do actually use. I think it's more common than we give it credit for. And I think it's also one of the trickier ones to challenge because it just becomes such a natural way of doing things or thinking about things. I think about working with teenagers. And it's not uncommon for me to have a teenager that comes in and says, life just sucks, right? Or my parents...
Everything sucks.
Yeah, everything sucks.
Yeah.
My parents hate me,
yeah,
right? And then the trick begins on how we help a teenager dissect that. But we buy into this philosophy that things are one way or another. And generally, my experience has been that it's somewhere in between.
Right. Well, and I think it's important to point out, all of us have thoughts like that, life sucks. But there are some specific reasons why we should challenge that. If that thought continues to roll through your mind over and over and over again, and it kind of becomes your mantra, life sucks, life sucks, life sucks, how are you actually going to feel? Then when something good happens, how likely are you going to be to actually accept the good thing versus dismiss it? When we have some of these thoughts that go through our minds, then that's all we're looking for is evidence to support that. We might disregard the friend at school who talked to us and we laughed for a couple of minutes, but we're definitely going to remember the 5 minutes that we took that pop quiz and felt like we failed it,
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like doing negative affirmations in your head all the time.
Without awareness of it, right?
Yeah.
And then you buy into it. I don't want to get too specific, but I do want to share something that an actual conversation I had with a teenage client not too terribly long ago. It was this individual's birthday, and not the day of therapy. They were telling me about their birthday, and they wanted to go somewhere specific for breakfast, and parents overruled that and went somewhere else, and all of the folks that went got their order correct except my client.
Story of my life.
Right? That's what
Always
I mean.
Me, all the time, every single time.
Is it? Maybe you should.
Probably not, but that's how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. But you can see how if you have some of these experiences that are negative, it's easy to buy into the everything piece or the black and white thinking. And I like the trick of trying to figure out how do we then parse that apart. And to be fair, I've also had teenagers, and this is always fun, call me out in session when I'm doing things. Oh, you want to play that game, Josh? That's a thinking error. That's a thinking error. Which is very true, right?
I think teenagers are easy scapegoats for a lot of thinking errors, probably.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Even adults, I think of I was trying to rack my brain, like, okay, what do I do? What do adults do that are thinking or this all or nothing thinking? And I think of like when you don't sleep very good, or you wake up and your neck hurts or whatever, and you're like, my day is just ruined. This whole day is just shot right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you burn your breakfast or whatever, right? Something bad happens right at the beginning, and you're like, it's just one of those days, isn't it? Right? And if you set yourself up that way, it probably will be one of those days, because like Shara said, you're going to pay attention to all the crappy things that happened that day instead of recognizing this was just one unfortunate thing. They just got my order wrong at this restaurant, and I didn't get to go where I wanted, but I still have 23 more hours today.
Well, I want to add to that. So continuing along with the same story, I didn't think about this earlier, but this client then began to tell me about what they did during the day and where they went to dinner and their experience eating cheesecake. And it was like, do you not like cheesecake? I thought everybody liked cheesecake. And my client was like, no, I like cheesecake. But because everything had been, and to be fair, it had been kind of a crappy start to the day, I was not able to tell if they liked cheesecake or not. And so sometimes it sucks the fun out of the good experiences that we might have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually see this a lot with some of the college students that I see as well. What will happen is that a client will come in and they'll start to tell me about a test that they took or an assignment that they did. And what will happen is they'll start to tell me about it and tell me that they feel like they're such a failure. That's a common term that we hear. I'm a failure. And the interesting thing is, for the most part, they didn't get a straight up F on their assignment. They might have got like a C or a B plus or something. And for them, it's hard not to overgeneralize and just turn that into all or nothing. Well, I either get an A or I get an F. I'm either 100% perfect or I'm a total failure. And there ends up being nothing in between. We don't stop to consider like, oh no, actually you got a C plus. And with the way that everything averages out, it's probably going to be a B, you know?
It makes me think of a very famous all or nothing thinking line. If you're not first, you're last.
Talladega Nights.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, that actually is a good one. Maybe we could put a clip of that on here somewhere.
Maybe. So what do we do? How do you challenge those thoughts? Because we've kind of talked about how we all experience them. We've gone over some examples, but how do you recognize that when you're doing that, and then what do you do to stop it?
Good questions. I actually really liked the way that you explained how you do this one. So maybe you could share with everybody some of how you challenge this one.
Sure. I like to think of it like almost like a 3-step approach. Step 1 being recognize, okay, wait a second, I am all or nothing thinking. I'm black and white thinking right now. My whole day is not ruined, actually. Like, it's only 10 a.m. So recognize the thought and challenge that real quick, and then look for the evidence, right? Is there any proof that my whole day is actually ruined so far? Well, no. If I think real logically about it, I still have 10 hours left of being awake that good things could potentially happen, right? And then the third step is replacing that with a more rational thought. And so maybe it's, okay, maybe I didn't get to go where I wanted for breakfast and they ruined my order, but I get to see my friends later, or we're going to go do this fun thing, or I'm going to get presents, right? There's still things to look forward to in a day. My day is not ruined.
Right. I actually like that. So you're taking this couple of steps to challenge some of your thoughts and to give yourself opportunity to have possibility for other things.
Yeah. Leaving the room open for good things to happen, right? Instead of closing the door and be like, nope, this day's done. It sucks, it's over, I'll wait till tomorrow to try again.
Right. One of the things that I was just thinking that I hear people say a lot too is that if you just expect everything to go horrible, then you're never let down. And so it's almost this idea that all or nothing thinking isn't harmful, that if you just expect the worst, then maybe occasionally you'll be pleasantly surprised. But I have to say that we want that to work more than it actually does work.
I agree.
For the most part, there aren't going to be these big, wonderful, amazing events in our lives. Instead, we have to learn how to enjoy some of the smaller things. And if we're already expecting the worst, we're going to run over the smaller things. So I think that that's one thing that sometimes stops people from taking maybe this 3-step approach,
Yeah.
because we feel like it would be better to keep some of this all or nothing thinking, but it really is robbing us of our happiness.
Yeah, I can see how it would feel like safer that way. I think at least people of my generation probably all learned that from SpongeBob when he says he aims low to avoid disappointment, which is probably not practical life advice, but it kind of falls into that same idea.
I didn't know SpongeBob said that.
I think Patrick says it.
I think if I were to just add my 2 cents into this, it would be maybe what we call this skill is the gathering evidence skill, right? And so this could be something that those of you who are watching might want to work on, is if you have this thought and we can build the awareness that Jaden talks about. I'm a failure. That seems to be the phrase for this episode. Can we gather evidence to the contrary? It's going to be much easier to gather evidence to support the I'm a failure. I will throw that out there. I see that a lot. Because if you burn your toast and your favorite shirt was dirty or whatever, it's going to be easy in that mindset to find the negative things already. But I think the skill would be, can you challenge that initial thought and can you gather evidence to the contrary?
Yeah. And does burning your toast actually make you a failure of a human? Or
It does make me sad.
and it does make your breakfast kind of gross. But that doesn't necessarily mean the thought itself is completely true.
Right.
And, you turn in an assignment and don't get a great grade on it. That doesn't necessarily make you a straight up failure. It may mean that you didn't get an A on your assignment, but that doesn't necessarily equate to failure. So even finding some of the gray areas in between can help us to challenge those thoughts. Maybe it's not evidence completely to the contrary. It's just evidence that's not completely affirming of the negative thought.
Good point.
Sure. Well, hopefully something we talked about today has been helpful. I'd encourage you to try challenging some of those black and white, all or nothing thoughts that we all have, and they're universally unhelpful, I think. So I'd encourage you to try challenging some of those things going forward this week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, Jaden here. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you found something useful in today's episode. If you did, and you want to keep up on the content we're going to be making, please subscribe, follow, or leave us a positive review. It helps us a lot. Again, thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.